Hey everyone, this is Matt Davenport.
And this is Kerri Jansen. Thanks for tuning in to the second mini-episode/promo segment for C&EN's upcoming podcast, Stereochemistry.
If you read the magazine, you hear from our guest today all of the time, although you may not have actually heard her before.
We wanted to change that, so we invited C&EN Editor-in-Chief Bibiana Campos-Seijo down to our studio.
We talked about what she's expecting of the podcast, but also where C&EN is headed this year. Before we got to those big picture questions, though, we started with the small, important question of how do you address your boss on a podcast? Is Bibi cool? Would you like to be Bibiana for the podcast?
No, Bibi. Yeah, oh yes. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Only my mom used to call me Bibiana when she was angry. So, so no, Bibi. Yeah. I want to be like a Bono, 4-letter names,
sure.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
That's it.
Now, do you have any musical skills? Because we really got to come up with the theme song.
So I was born in the 70s. You probably don't want me helping with that. I would say that I have very good taste in music, but it's quite outdated, I would say. In my lab, I don't know if this is allowed anymore, but we had a radio, and very often, because I was in the UK, the person who was in charge of the radio, he was a fan of cricket, so he would make us listen to cricket for about 4 days non-stop. Yes, and then the revenge would be that we would bring our tapes. This is how long ago this was, and you would put your tapes, and everybody had to listen to your music. So I had a Led Zeppelin very often. So that would be my kinds of suggestions for the podcast.
So we're obviously starting a podcast, and what is it that you hope to hear?
I would like it to be a dynamic version of what we do at C&EN, and that's a very non-sophisticated way of explaining it. We have a lot of conversations with people from the chemical sciences community, and then we extract what we think is relevant to a particular story, and there's so much that doesn't make it into the view of the public. So from that point of view, we might be able to extract some of these anecdotes or these little stories that are part of what we publish on an ongoing basis. I think there's a lot of richness there that we haven't tapped into before. I'm hoping as well that we will be able to give the reporters another avenue to provide some analysis or even opinion. We don't do that very often, and I think that this medium lends itself to that.
Yeah, so you talked about how a podcast is another avenue for journalists to tell their stories. I mean, obviously we have access now to a ton of technology that wasn't available even 5 or 10 years ago. Could you talk a little bit more broadly about how you see storytelling in journalism changing because of this new technology?
I think it's brilliant. It's really exciting because journalists who are dynamic, this is a great opportunity for them in that in a way it doesn't matter whether it's going to be in print or on the web or a video or a podcast. They will just tell a story and they will choose the best channel for them to output that story. So in a way, it really is changing the way we work, because you have to make those choices as you go, as you do your research about a story, as you talk to the scientists. Some scientists are brilliant and really articulate. So from that point of view, it would be really nice to give them an opportunity to feature in a podcast or in a video simply because they're good communicators. And that's something that before, if the story only made it into print or the web, you never got that. I think also it's great that we are hopefully going to have people from different parts of the world, different accents. I think that will be fantastic as well, have that mix of people from different geographies. Again, when you're printing words or putting words on the web, you don't get accents, you don't get hesitations. To me, in a way, it's part of the story. So I guess that the storytelling is even more nuanced than before, and I think that's brilliant.
I wanted to ask just more broadly about chemical and engineering news, not just the podcast, because in 2017, we did a lot. Internally, there's a lot of changes in how we do things. There's a lot of ambition in the types of stories we told. What are the trends you see for 2018? What do you hope the C&EN Media Group accomplishes at large?
It's a good question, and I think that is exciting. I think 2018 is full of opportunity for us because we're going to capitalize on all those things that we did in 2017. There's different elements here. I think one is the technology. We have more that is available to us, and we are taking more advantage of technologies like this podcast, for example. We are getting better at distributing our content, so it reaches more people in different parts of the world, and we're seeing a lot of growth there. So the technology is a big enabler for us. I think from the point of view of the content itself, I think C&EN has always been able to showcase excellent journalism. I think what we're doing is more of those stories where we actually show the human side of chemistry, which is fantastic, and I think the feedback so far has been great from the community. So I would give you another example, the sexual harassment story that we wrote at the end of last year, and that article was circulated very widely in chemistry departments around the country because some people were using it as a training document, as an educational piece that they could say, that they could show to the people in the department and say, this is a problem, this is something that we need to be aware of, and we need to do something about it. And it started some conversations. So on the back of that, we are going to be doing a webinar early this year and a symposium at the ACS National Meeting in New Orleans. So in a way, we're doing more around the human side of science, but we're also making, more complex decisions around our content. It's not just a story that goes into a print product or onto the web. We look at how we can add value to that story for a reader, and they will have different ways of looking at it through webinars, through events, through just reading the story on the web. Going beyond that as well, we're doing more in terms of quizzes, of engaging with people on social media, so we get that continuous feedback and interaction with the communities. We're doing more dynamic or interactive features, databases. So from that point of view, it's all adding to what we do, make it more consumable, more enjoyable, because I think at the end of the day, we're there to inform people, but also to entertain them. And I think we're getting better and better at both.
So at this point of the interview, having talked about our goals, we shifted our conversation with Bibi toward what she thinks success will look like for the podcast.
I would love to have people at the national meeting, come to us and say, I was in the gym the other day and I was listening to your podcast and I thought that, this was a great story, or I had an idea, or I was driving in and your podcast, you had this guy who sparked this idea for a new research initiative, and my lab has started doing that. When we start getting those stories and those comments from people, I think then that's when we can say that our podcast has been successful. So that's what we're aiming for. I think 2018 is going to be an even greater year for C&EN, building on everything that we did on 2017, reaching more people than ever through different kinds of channels and venues, and if they have any ideas or suggestions for content or events or whatever, they can get in touch, and they should do that.
Awesome. That's a great segue. You are on Twitter, so people could tweet at you directly if they wanted to, right?
Sure, definitely, yes, at Bibiana Campos.
Awesome. And Kerri, you're on Twitter as well?
I am at Absolute Kerri.
And I'm at Mr. Matt Davenport, or you can email us. We have a multimedia email address, CEN_multimedia@acs.org. I should know this, there's a C&EN, is there a tip line? Do we have a tip line yet?
Yeah, but I don't know what it is. I have no idea. There's a mailbox as well, but I couldn't tell you what the email address. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, and good luck with the podcast.
Thanks, Bibi. That email address that we couldn't remember, it's CENprojects@acs.org.
And we weren't joking about contacting us. Feel free to email us and tweet at us with what you want to hear on this podcast. We'll have our first full episode ready for you on February 28th. Subscribe to Stereochemistry on iTunes right now, though, and you'll be one of the first to know when it's ready.
You can also look for us on Google Play and TuneIn. Stay tuned for another preview installment next week. I'll be joined by C&EN reporter Linda Wang to talk about a symposium on sexual harassment in chemistry taking place at the ACS National Meeting in New Orleans.
Thanks for listening.